Yeah. So her next section in this has to do with the roots of political correctness, right? And she indicates that postmodernism does get some things right. And so she gives us a list of 2 or 3 of them here. She says it has done good service in countering the lonely individualism of the Enlightenment's autonomous self, right? It rejects the modernist project of thinkers like Bacon and Descartes to start history over from scratch within the isolated individual consciousness. It denies that we can reach an infallible foundation for knowledge by direct intuition into the contents of the individual's mind. And so she says in the process, postmodernisms have debunked Enlightenment claims to neutral, timeless, value-free knowledge, right? So there is, people have a perspective, and they do, right? And so that needs to be taken into account. And so postmodernism has raised that particular issue to help us to understand that. They insist that the real living individual always brings to the table a complex view of prior commitments, interests, goals, and ambitions, even in fields like science, where objectivity is the expected norm. Right.
And this is something that we would say as people that would say that worldviews play a huge interest in how we interpret facts or what we bring to the table, and they just kind of go a bit step further than what we would. But having an idea that you can't just say, okay, well, we'll start from a neutral position, we would definitely agree with that as well.
Yeah. For instance, far from being, she says, indicates here, a neutral blank slates, right? Our minds are predisposed to interpret new data in light of the convictions that we already hold, what we want to be true, right? So we're not neutral and we're not blank, is what she's suggesting. Yet postmodernism typically goes further than this common sense biblical insight into the much more radical claims that there is no extra mental truth. So it's all, it's all part of what's going on here. It reduces truth claims to social constructions, right? And it reduces individuals to puppets of social forces, she indicates. Yeah. So the implication is that people hold certain ideas not because they have good reasons to hold these ideas, but because they are in a particular community. They're black, they're white, they're a man, they're a woman, Asian, Hispanic, or whatever. Yeah, right? So that's why people hold these various ideas. She says this is radically dehumanizing. Now, we would think it was just the opposite, right? Well, you're emphasizing the community that the person is in. Right. That seems to be a good thing. She says, no, this is radically dehumanizing. It implies, notice, that individuals are powerless to rise above the communities to which they belong. Right. So they're stuck in this particular community and they can't get out. Right, kind of thing. And so she says this is dehumanizing. It's a form of reductionism that dissolves individual identity into group identity. And the list of group identities keeps growing, right? You have all kinds of things, race, gender, socioeconomic class, sexual orientation, your ability, your religion, international status, power differentials, on and on and on and on, right? And so at many universities, the liberal arts departments no longer teach the classics, but immerse students in contemporary works on, for instance, racial or sexual, politics or something like that. Postmodernism, she says, is leagues away from the materialism rampant in the science department, right? But it is equally dehumanizing because materialism reduces humans to products of physical forces, because that's all that exists, right? The physical world. Postmodernism, she says, reduces humans to products of social forces, right? So notice a reductionism is still going on here, right? But it's social forces instead of political forces for postmodernism. So whenever a philosophy absolutizes something less than God, right? No matter what it is, the result is a reductionism, a lower view of the human person. So postmodernists themselves label their view anti-humanism, by which they mean the human subject has no power to transcend social and historical conditions, right? The world, they're stuck in their particular community.
Yeah, which is odd, too, because a big kind of undertaking in the social sciences, looking at deviant behavior, and deviant meaning just outside the norm of the expected, what you would expect. And so in that case, there is no deviancy. You're just needing to redraw your circles around the groups of people and community that you're a slave to. Mm-hmm. And I would say that at some point you're drawing the circles so small that you are individualistic at that point. And I think that would be one of the big problems that we kind of haven't gotten to, because what we're wanting to do now, we as society at large, mm-hmm. is there's the want to talk, to speak truth to power. Whatever truth is, it's your truth. Speak
and
your
whatever
truth.
Power is.
Yeah, and whatever you've made up in your mind is, this is a product of colonialism. The fact that in 1776 America declared its independence, and that has affected us and how we treat the Lower East Side of Detroit's bisexual community that has jeans on, because that's what the product of their environment has told them that they must conform to. Yeah. And so deviant behavior within that would say, well, I don't wear denim jeans, I wear plaid jeans, I don't know, whatever it might be. Yeah. And so then the plaid jeans have to speak truth to power within the denim community. I don't know, but you're always having to redraw these figures, unless you want to combine your power together to speak truth to a different power. And it's, unfortunately, I tend to be the most powerful person.
You go, Patrick.
White male, cis male, Christian, all the bad things.
Yeah. So, but she notes, and this is really interesting here. She says, by contrast, Christianity offers a transcendent truth. Yeah. So it's not dependent on a particular perspective or a social group or community. It transcends all of that, right? It's a perspective that's not bound by the spirit of the age. It liberates individuals to think critically about what is going on in terms of the spirit of the age. So we're allowed to kind of, Christianity anyway, from view, as it were, as a result of revelation and God, a larger perspective.
Yeah, it's paracultural. I mean, you see it even in the early forms of the church. And if you think that kind of critical race theory is new today, I mean, that's the Roman world was there was no middle class. You were a slave. You were live meal to meal, Pole, or you were part of the elite ruling class. There really wasn't a middle class that we have today, where you can kind of have these structures in place to speak different truths to power in certain regards there. And so what you have in the early church is people from all tongue, tribe, nation coming together under the unification of Jesus and the belief that he was the Christ. And it's something that even within Rome you didn't see. You had your gods, and as long as you proclaimed your allegiance to Caesar, then that's fine. Right. But here are people who were really rich and who were slave owners and who were slaves and who ran away from their slave masters, coming to a combined faith, and they worshiped in the same as equals.
Right, and that was the ideal. And of course, there were the apostles and church leaders had to make sure that happened, and there were some times when it didn't, and so they had to
even among their own.
Yeah, but that was the ideal. That was what which is different than this idea where we have separate communities, separate groups, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and then you have to structure on a ladder who's the most oppressed. They get the most voice. But I think someone like Ayn Rand type philosophy would speak against this even type of philosophy by having an understanding that the individual is the lowest form of diversification that you could possibly make.